Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great pleasure of speaking with Andrea Pollack, and we are actually going to continue that talk today. So if you did not get a chance to tune into that episode, please do, so that you can learn more about Andrea. But just to give you a brief background, Andrea was a litigator for 19 years and basically left to homeschool her autistic son. Little did she know that it would take about 8 years of homeschooling before he would go back into the school system. But during that time, Andrea actually learned that there was a really big need, and that need was helping to guide parents in their parenting with a special needs child. A lot of therapists provide great therapy, great solutions, but what she was noticing was that parents needed help with their mindset and help to have tools and resources for themselves so that they could provide the very best for their children as well. Andrea has developed a coaching program that she teaches parenting strategies. She decided to go back to school basically for her master's in education after she came out of all of this. And so I'm so excited to continue that talk today with Andrea. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on for a second segment.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here again.
I know. So we talked a lot about last week about just the struggles of, being a parent with a special needs child. We, heard a lot of your experiences and what led you on this journey to basically develop this program. And I really want to just, jump right in because I'm so excited for our listeners to hear what you have to offer. But I would love for you to share a little bit of an overview about the program that you've developed to help parents.
Sure. Well, the big picture overview is what we focus on is first, we help parents solve the issues that they're dealing with right now. We help them with strategies, mindset around those strategies, and implementation right now so that tomorrow is better than today. And so we have that ongoing interaction. At the same time, what we're doing is we're teaching the parents a framework that they can use to think about how to resolve issues. Okay. So we're resolving them right away so that they can, feel that movement right away, but also helping them learn the process so that they can remember last time we talked about, building that confidence so that you can trust your intuition. And so that repetitive practice of learning a framework to solve, find solutions to whatever issues you're experiencing is the way that confidence grows because you're implementing the same basic framework over and over.
Okay.
So it's those two pieces then combined with the parents' mindset issues because our mindset can really get in the way of doing what we know is most effective. So for example, if people are telling you, you should discipline him for that. He should have consequences for this, that, or the other thing. But your intuition is saying, well, wait a second. He's not doing well here because he's dysregulated. There was a need that wasn't met. He didn't have the frustration tolerance yet, which is part of his disability that he's working on. And that's why this happened. So punishment will not build the frustration tolerance, will not meet the need, right? So the might have been that the expectation was wrong. Like we expected something that he couldn't do. So why should he get punished for that? That's not a punishable offense. But yet, your upbringing tells you like you get punished when you do bad things, or people around you are saying you should punish him, or even, people focus on a behavioral model. Should say, if you don't address that behavior, it's going to keep happening. So that it creates an internal conflict in the parent's mind. That's something that I help them work through to really understand that that's what's simmering beneath the surface so they can take it out, take a look at what's operating under there and make choices, out in the open.
Yeah. And I would always feel frustrated too, because I would hear comments like you're saying, my friends and family would be like, oh, just discipline him, or what's the consequence, or all this. And then if I didn't do that, it was, well, he's manipulating you.
Yes.
There's a manipulation. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to help him see and understand. And he sees and understands things differently than how we do. And I felt like I constantly had to almost stick up for myself with that, because people couldn't, certain friends and family around me couldn't understand that. And then they just thought that Drayson was just manipulating me. And maybe to some degree, because I know that kids know how to really play the field with their parents. I get it. But at the same time, I was like, no, this is a dysregulation thing. This is a behavioral thing. And if I punish him, he's not gonna understand or see the difference in that. So I felt like I had to also really combat that too as a parent. Because it is hard. You do have that mindset. We do kind of come from that time of, oh, well, if you're bad, you're going to be punished. Well, if you let them do it, then they're just going to walk all over you. So I always felt kind of really caught in the middle.
Yes. I mean, that thinking presumes that the behavior that they're exhibiting is intentional. That they're intending to do this to get a particular outcome.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's happening to them as much as it's happening to us.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we have no boundaries. I mean, I help parents learn how to set boundaries and help children observe boundaries. That's a really important life skill. So this isn't about like they rule the roost. We don't. It's not that at all. But it's about making distinctions between, what behavior is resulting from missing skills that we need to just teach them, and punishment's not going to teach them skills,
right?
Versus what is potentially manipulative,
right? And you mentioned mindset, and the role of what mindset can play in the success of this. Would you say that that's just that is probably one of the biggest fundamentals is focusing for parents, is focusing on their mindset to the success of growing these strategies that we're talking about?
Absolutely. And you know how we know that? Because if mindset weren't an issue, you could read a parenting book and just do what it said and be done. Like you would just do it, right?
That's very true. If only it were that simple, but yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
It's true. Yeah.
Right. So it's all the other complexities that are wrapped up in our mindset and even the way we implement things, right? So, I mean, there are other reasons why books, again, nothing disparaging. They're very, very helpful. But if you try something that's in a book and it didn't work, you have no place to go back and say, well, when I did this, that happened. So what do I do next? The ongoing support is also a big piece of it. But there's a mindset element in there too. Like you did this, but what was your mindset when you did that?
Right. How did you step into that when you,
impact, right.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Impact how you execute something. Exactly.
Right. That's it's very interesting, very enlightening points that you're bringing up. I mean, these are all things that I feel like I've discovered the hard way, like you. Like that's why I was so excited to speak with you on the show today, because and that's partially why I created this podcast, was I've made so many mistakes over the years that I wanted to be able to offer something for friends and family and loved ones who have special needs kids to maybe not necessarily make the same mistakes that I made and to understand that you really have to work on yourself. I have very intensely had to work on myself as an individual in order to be the best version of me for Drayson. Like I have to step into that and show up in a way that in all my life, right? Throughout my educational career, my professional career, this is a different level, completely different level. And it's a very personal and intimate thing. And I don't think sometimes we realize that,
Right. And that's a perfect explanation for why mindset matters so much, right? Because and it's interesting because a lot of times like I mentioned to you, I meet with really conscientious, hardworking, loving parents, but they don't want to pay attention to themselves because they want to give it all to their child. And I have to help them see that actually you need to invest in becoming the best person that you can be for your child. That's what's going to raise all the boats.
Right.
But it's not, you know, it's not selfish to try to
Right.
become the best person that you can be, to become the best parent that you can be.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The mom guilt is real.
Yes.
It's like, it's a real thing. You don't realize it until you do get into parenthood that you're like, oh, okay. Why? And I started to question that. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I doing? And then I started to realize that Drayson was reacting in a way that I think it was because of me, because of my emotion, because of my reactions, because of my mindset, like we were just talking about. And I realized that a lot of times some of the result was probably because of what I was vibing, what I was putting out. And that's been,
I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm going to give you an example of what you did.
Yeah,
No, but
right.
an example I've seen all the time. But,
Yeah.
Something like, if you're believing that your child won't do something or you won't be able to, but you are going to make them try, they feel that all over the place.
Yeah.
Whereas if you come to it with let's try, like a playful,
Yeah.
fun, supportive, and it doesn't matter
Yeah.
really if
And let's
the
just see
success
what
will be ending.
happens. Yeah.
Doing it together is going to be the thing we're working toward. It totally increases your odds of doing the thing because you're
Right.
coming to it with energy, and your child totally feeds off that energy. And that's just
Yeah.
one example. There are like millions, but as you
Oh,
were
yeah.
talking, I was thinking about, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sure, and for our listeners, for those of you listening, I challenge you guys to think about some of those moments. Think about some of those moments and ask yourself if that was something that would have maybe been swayed in a different way if your mindset had been differently. I mean, that's a really good question, I think, that we need to ask ourselves as individuals, especially when it comes to our parenting role. And not just parenting role, I guess, really in every facet of our life, right? I mean, you could apply that to anything, really. So I know we were talking about your program, and this is like, I'm so excited to get into kind of a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of this, but what are some actionable steps that parents can take to start shifting their mindset and improve their interactions with their children?
Great. I love that question. The first thing would be, to change your perspective on your child's behavior. When your child is behaving in a way that is not optimal in your eyes, instead of thinking of it as them manipulating you or them, engaging in bad behavior, look for what's causing that. Why is this happening? Right. And then also be careful about broad assumptions. Parents say to me, well, he did that because he's lazy. He didn't want to
Oh,
clear
yes. Yeah.
or put his in the dishwasher because he's lazy. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Right? Because sometimes it's like in that moment, they just don't have the mental energy to do it. Or it's an executive function failure, right? They're like, I can't think of all the steps to clear my plates, take them to the counter, rinse them in the sink, put them in the dishwasher. That's like a several step thing. And in the
It's a
moment,
lot.
they might be, right, not able to do that. So really thinking through, really giving your child the benefit of the doubt that there's a reason why whatever it is you want to happen or not happen, there's a reason that you can help your child with, right? So the idea being, this is the theme that I help parents see, is really prioritize support over discipline.
Right.
When you look at what they need as support versus discipline, it changes everything. So that's a really important interrupt. When you feel yourself having the urge to want to discipline them for something, try to interrupt that and say, is there support that my child needs right here that will change the trajectory that we're on at the moment?
That's such a good point. And it's funny that you brought up like the dishes, because I had something happen not too long ago with Drayson. I just asked him to take his dish to the sink, right? And he wouldn't do it. He kept telling me no. And I went into that, he's being defiant, right? I realized that he wasn't getting out of the chair. He was sitting at a high top chair. And I realized that he wasn't getting out of the chair. And I started to look at him kind of surveying, like, why will this kid not put his dish in the sink? And I said, he didn't have socks on. And I said, and we have a tile floor. And I said, are your feet cold? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, well, let me get you a pair of socks. So I got him a pair of socks. He put the socks on. He got up, took the dish, went around into the kitchen and put it in the sink. And I realized, I'm like, his feet were cold. Like
That is such a perfect example.
and I
And
was
also,
like,
they can't always,
yeah,
they can't always figure it out either.
he couldn't articulate. Yeah. And then I said to him, did you not get up because your feet were cold and you didn't want to touch the tile? And he said, yes. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So it was just kind of surveying the environment to make me wonder, what is it that's, that's holding him back from that? Because every other time, it's like, okay, we'll go. Well, I'm like, why won't he go put his dish in the sink? And
Right. That's such a perfect example.
yeah, and I think that because
and you asked him,
yeah, I asked him,
so
like, are your feet
you
cold?
asked him in the moment,
Yes.
right? But if you asked him in the moment, why won't you put your dish in the sink? He might not have been able to.
No, he wouldn't have. He didn't tell me why. Yeah, because I even said out of frustration, I was like, why can't you just go put your dish in the sink? And he's like, I don't know. Like he just said, I don't know, because he can't articulate it. So I just kind of started looking around, and I realized that he was still sitting on the and he wasn't putting his foot all the way down on the floor. And I thought his feet are probably cold, which I know he has sensory processing disorder. So I know that there's a lot of sensory things for him. And I thought, and I was reading once that cold feels like wet to them on the bottoms of their feet. And so when I put socks on him, he didn't tippy-toe walk. He went flat feet. He walked on the floor. Like, it was all of those things. And then it was like a non-issue. He just got up and put his dish away. And I was like, okay. So I told him, I was like, next time, if your feet are cold, let's get you some socks. So I felt like I was kind of alleviating two different things at the same time. But it took me a second, because I did enter that state of frustration. Like, why can't you just put your dish in the sink? Because it seems so simple to me.
Yeah, it's such a perfect example. That's because it's the kind of example where you overlook this idea of, is there support that I can provide,
right,
instead of discipline. That's
right.
And another thing they help parents, think about is there an expectation I'm having that is too far above what he is able to do right now? Because so many times that's the case, and and sometimes parents say, well, he could do it yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I say, well, not every day is the same. I said, have you ever come home from work and been like, I cannot cook dinner. We're doing pizza tonight, or we're doing cereal.
Oh, I'm done. Yeah.
Right? You could do it yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing.
Right.
So, really taking a look at what we're expecting, and if there's a way to adjust the expectation just in the moment. It doesn't mean that I'm not advocating like lowering expectations overall. Absolutely not. But we want to set them up for success by creating an expectation they can meet, and then just raising it by a tiny bit each time, which will ultimately get them to the higher level of expectation.
To where they need to be, or where you want them to be. Yeah.
That makes sense. They're absolutely able to, but again, that gets back to doing it through small successes, like little building blocks, versus failure after failure. Failing is not going to teach them all those tiny steps in between.
Right. And neither will your frustration. I mean, I was like, it took me a second. I went into that, like I said, on the example I was just giving, like I went into that state, and then I had to like check myself for a second, like, it's not probably the best approach, It's like, and
can I mention something on that?
Of course.
Which is also, though, that I really want parents to be nice to themselves. Like, we are human, and we are humaning, and you're going to be frustrated sometimes, and sometimes we're not going to have the best. I don't want parents to hear this and think, oh my goodness, now there's a standard on me that I can't meet. I'm supposed to be perfect, and I'm supposed to have feelings, and no, not that. It's not that at all.
Right. Yeah.
It's the more you learn to interrupt these, these frustrations or discomfort, the more you learn, I can control this in the moment. I can control this emotion in the moment. I don't have to feel this way. Yeah. But it's going to happen, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
You're
still all the time. It happens to me all the time still, even though I can identify some of these things, and I think you bring up a great point that we do need to exercise grace on ourselves as well as the people that surround us. And I think sometimes that's a hard thing to do when you're caught in the element, but I think for me, when I recognize that, I feel grateful that I can recognize that I maybe need to take a step back and give myself that grace that I need. Because you're right, we're only human. Like it's natural to feel the emotions that we're feeling. And I think it's great. I love that you said that, because I think it's so important for our listeners to understand that as well. Absolutely. How do you kind of address, so we're talking about offering the support that we need for our kids, but, there needs to be that balance, right, between support and even discipline. Because we were just talking about, people are like, you just need to discipline them. I'm like, but this isn't a discipline thing. So do you have any suggestions on how to address the balance between support and discipline? Do you have that within your program, and why is that so important?
What I tell parents is initially to really prioritize support. Like if you have to, it's not a balance really. Like in the beginning, because they're getting so much discipline from the world. The world is telling them, don't do this, don't do that. You're not right. You should sit down, don't run around.
Right.
So my feeling about it is like, let's rebalance their world with extreme support. That's the starting place. But they need to learn how to observe boundaries, of course.
Yes.
And that's an important life skill. The discipline comes in, it comes in terms, I think, of the most natural consequences, right? So like you don't take away dessert if a child hits a sibling. Like those two things have nothing to do with each other.
And
they're never gonna learn that they shouldn't hit their sibling by not having dessert. They're just going to be further dysregulated.
Right.
So, if your child hits the sibling, what you might do is, give attention to the other sibling and say, I'm going to help, your brother right here because you were hitting him. I'm going to just make sure he's okay. And I'll be back to talk to you. Right. So you're not you. I don't really believe in ignoring either.
Right.
Because there's something going on there. So ignoring it is not going to stop it, in my opinion.
Right.
I think that your child is probably in distress if that's happening. So ignoring a child in distress doesn't feel right to me. But giving, if your son or daughter is looking for your attention, they're not going to get it necessarily by hitting a sibling. The sibling is going to get the attention. So that's that's probably not the best example, but
but that's the consequence, because you're not pouring into that. The consequence is that you're not going to get that attention if that's what you're trying to get from that.
Right. I'll give you a better example, because I don't always think I think attention, when a kid needs attention, they need attention. We should give
right. Yeah. I know. Right.
You're trying to figure out how to give them positive attention. But another example, let's use an example of still hitting, like your child, like I have parents who say like their children hit them when they don't get something, like candy at the grocery store, let's say. And what I think is useful is to help your child, like hold their hand, say, I'm going to help you not hit me. I don't think you really want to hit me. I can see that you're really out of sorts, so I'm going to help you calm down. So still giving them attention, right? You're not ignoring them, but you're not giving them the candy either.
Right.
So that's the boundary. You set the boundary at you're not getting candy.
Right.
But you're not setting the boundary at, and therefore you're dead to me. Like,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. That's it. You're cut off now. Yeah.
Right. You're setting the boundary. I'm going to help you not hit me.
Yeah.
Because I think, again, giving our kids the benefit of the doubt, they don't want to be hitting. Their body is right now out of control with dysregulation. And, and I'm not saying we're saying it's okay either. We're saying it's not okay. I'm going to help you not hit me because hitting isn't okay. Right. But so that's how you can support and discipline at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Example. Yeah, no, that's a great example actually. And I think that it's, what I'm hearing too is that there is a level of communication that we have to practice at and learn. Like it took me a long time to learn how to communicate that way to Drayson. Like you're saying, hitting me is not appropriate, and I'm going to help you to understand like why you shouldn't hit mom or dad, or why you shouldn't hit anybody. And then also maybe trying to help them of ways of having that outlet too, because I want him to be able to express himself. I want him to be able to eventually tell me why. And I know he can't always tell me the why right now. So I think that's always been a struggle for me, is how can I help draw him out so that he can start communicating that why, because I'm not going to be around forever. Like, and I want him to be able to advocate for himself or to speak for himself. And I think as a mom, that's probably one of my biggest worries for him. And so I think you bring up a really good point with this example that you just gave, because there is kind of a level up, I feel like, on communication that I've had to really put into play as a parent that I didn't necessarily have not had to do in other facets of my life.
Yeah. And I would just suggest one or two thoughts on your example, which I also love. And I totally agree with you that the communication is so important. But I think they understand why they shouldn't hit. It's not about understanding.
Yes.
So when I say help you not hit, it's not gonna help you understand why. I know you understand why. It's like you don't understand why your body's doing this, actually.
Yes. Okay.
It's regulation. I'm gonna help you not do it. Right? I'm gonna either give you a big hug or I'll give you something else you can hit, right? Let's look for a substitute that gives you that outlet. I love that you raised that, because they do need that outlet sometimes, but hitting a person isn't appropriate. So what you're doing in that moment is you are also helping to teach them how to satisfy that need.
Their need.
Right? You're giving them a substitute. Let's hit this pillow.
Yeah.
Because pillows don't feel hurt.
With an appropriate response. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. So you are teaching skills there. You're saying when your body feels like this, don't hit people, hit a pillow, or squeeze this squeezy bowl, or bite this chewy toy. Right? There are other ways they can have an outlet in that moment other than hurting a person. And that is teaching a skill. Right. So and over time they can learn to access that themselves before they hit. They won't be dependent. In the beginning, they're dependent on us to give them that substitute.
Yes.
But over time, they learn how to self-regulate by using some of those things. And they may never know why that happens to them. Like I said, sometimes it happens to them as much as it happens to us. It just happens. They're suddenly like 0 to 60. Their nervous system's on fire, and they don't know why.
Right.
But here's something else you can do about it, and you're still not getting the candy.
Right, and you still don't get the piece of candy. Oh, and by the way, you're not getting the candy. Can you share? I would love to hear. Maybe, do you have any success stories from a parent who's gone through your program and how it impacted their family dynamics?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I have children who refuse to go to school. And that's a really hard one. And it's so common.
Yes, it is.
Including, one child who was threatening to throw himself out of a moving car on the way to school every day. So that was a problem.
Yeah.
And, those issues aren't necessarily solved overnight, but you can break them down into smaller solvable pieces, solve them bit by bit, help the child build up the tolerance. And, I have a couple of children who went from not able to go to school at all to happily going to school every day, succeeding at school, doing great. So that's one example. There's just so many.
So many,
yeah, sorry, my head was flooding all of a sudden. Even simple, we call them simple things, but things like grooming, kids who really had a hard time with some basic things. And that's something on a parenting front that feels very basic, right? I'm supposed to help my child, brush their teeth and be clean and do those things. And just really understanding where's the problem, where's that coming from, how can we solve the piece of the problem that's interfering with the child's ability to do the thing.
Yeah, because usually there's something always there. Every time I've gone down that rabbit hole with Drayson, I realize that there's something there that needs to be alleviated, that I didn't know or that I'm trying to identify, so that then we can get to the heart of the matter, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, I have children who, really couldn't be in social situations because they did have that, that immediate aggressive streak, and just helping the parents understand how to break it down and help them little by little. It's not like they wake up one morning and they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's not how it works. But we can work together to figure out why it's happening and how to help it bit by bit. And over time, they're
Right.
able to then they're able to go into an environment and have friends, which is what they want, right?
Yes. Yes.
And some kids, not all kids, but this particular child. I had a young man who he was older, but he just shut down. He was finished. And he went in his room and played video games all day long. Just basically wouldn't do anything else. And little by little, using what he was interested in, right? Getting it instead of like making him do things. Because eventually when you get to adulthood, you can't make them do anything.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Helping to uncover what were his motivations ultimately. What did he want to do? And how could we help him see the connection between coming out of his room and doing small things to what he wants in his future? Right?
Yeah.
So again, getting them to want to do things. There are going to be things kids don't want to do, but even helping them see the relevance to their lives is a way to help them want to do it in a like small W kind of way.
Well, and it would be more meaningful for them too to identify. But once they are able to identify that, I think it becomes more meaningful to them as well. And it's more. It would be more fulfilling. Yeah.
Yeah. He has 2 jobs. He drives a car. I mean, it was just an amazing thing. And then I have little ones too. Little ones who, didn't have any language and were, just had like tremendous sensory discomfort all the time. And their parents really, same process. You find where they are, you meet them where they are, you extend the next, goal or expectation within range for them to meet it, but you're still challenging them. We're always challenging them, right? So it's not about reducing expectations in the long run. It's about helping them ramp up to get there.
Right.
So that one little girl talks up a storm now and, has learned how to, she's hilarious. She's really hilarious.
That's funny.
And I wasn't helping them specifically and directly with the speech. I'm not a speech and language pathologist, but about helping parents understand how to build their children up in small steps, because parents have so much impact. Sometimes, we feel like, the professionals will do that. And my job is just to keep them like safe and fed. But we have so much ability to, build their self-esteem by setting them up for success and building those little successes and believing in them and those things. Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that, that we're not just doing this role of a quote unquote job, right, as a parent. But I think what I've noticed is since I've worked harder on formulating connection with Drayson and figuring out best ways to help him identifying those needs, helping him to be able to communicate in a way that is unconventional, but it works. I think that's been some of the biggest lessons for me personally is in realizing how important it is to me too. I thrive off of the connection I have with my son. I feel very blessed that I have the connection I have with my kids because, it's not just me being mom doing my mom duties, and I think that's so important too, that we lose sight of that sometimes too as a parent because we're in that almost like that fight or flight mode all the time, just trying to keep things going. And so I think it's important to remember that this connection is just as important for us as it is for our kids. So.
Absolutely. Right. We had children for the connection, right?
Right.
We didn't have them.
Right. Right. It's true. It's true. So for those of you listening in, I am going to post all of Andrea's information in the show notes so that you guys can delve in. And I know parents and educators can also get involved and seek support with you as well, Andrea, through your platform. So I am going to list Andrea's information in the show notes. If you're interested, I highly recommend that you touch base with Andrea and to learn more about her program and maybe just to help you with some parenting advice and some solutions so that it makes for a healthier and happier home with you and your special needs children. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being on the show today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed all of our conversations that we've been able to have together, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. This concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email, at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, or feel free to like or follow us on Facebook as well. I would greatly appreciate the love and support. And don't forget to spread the word to friends, family, and loved ones that could benefit from our podcast. We want to make sure that we're providing as much help and support to the community as possible. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.